This is Pod Populi, podcasts for the people.
And we found that when we had patients medicate about a half an hour before a cognitive behavioral therapy session, talk therapy session, then that fight or flight slowed down, and then there was a window of opportunity. We now know that was increasing parasympathetic response, decreasing sympathetic nervous system response, and it allowed a chance, instead of going straight into fight mode, there was a chance to pause and unpack.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, brought to you, powered by, sponsored by the No Fallen Heroes universe and the Maverick Mind universe. It's been a while. Man, a lot going on. Susie and I are actually heading out to San Antonio, Texas next week. Our oldest son, Matthew, is graduating from Air Force basic training. Never thought I'd have an Air Force Zoomie in the family, so I think I'll keep him. He's Russian, the Florida Air Guard, and wants to fly fighters like his old man, so incredibly proud of my boy. So, and just a ton of stuff, good stuff going on. So, but let's go ahead and get to our guest today. I continue to bring the average down by bringing Army guys on, but I'll probably pull us out of a nosedive here soon with some higher speed folks. But let me read this gentleman's bio, because it's incredible, and we're going to dig into the story of healing and transformation and service and putting the ladder down to help others heal. So he's just an incredible human being. Our guest today is Dr. Lance Cutsforth, which sounds like a name out of Excalibur or something like that. I just love this guy's name. He's been involved in mental wellness and organization since he was a teenager. He's an Army veteran who served as an enlisted Special Forces communications sergeant and then swapped over to be an infantry officer. So we're going to dig into that. His teaching and training ranges from indigenous mentorship to various modalities of psychotherapy to alternative therapies to neuropathic solutions to gut health, folks. All of this stuff, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, they're all connected together, mind, body, and soul. Double board certified in functional medicine. That ain't easy, folks. He practices from a place of lived experience when it comes to addressing childhood trauma, military trauma, suicidal ideation, TBI, and addiction. And I'm finding a lot of this in the space, I call it the world's greatest Ponzi scheme. Part of the hero's journey. You go out, you do some crazy shit, you go and heal, and you come home and you want to put the ladder down and help everybody else heal. So it's the world's greatest Ponzi scheme. He has worked with the medical application of cannabis to treat opioid addiction and trauma in the veteran population since 2010. So he's been at this for a while. He personally found deep and profound healing through the catalyst of entheogenic medicines and robust post-medicine support and integration. Absolutely critical, as we're going to get into, and has since integrated these medicines into his multi-modal approach to care. He and his beautiful bride, Amy, founded Mons Sana in Colorado, a community created to provide access to safe, supportive healing for military, first responders, law enforcement, veterans of those callings, and the family members who have supported all who serve. Lance and Amy work with those struggling with trauma, suicidal ideation, TBI, addiction, depression, anxiety, and help them transition from survive to thrive. And this is just absolutely incredible, utilizing a multi-modal approach to address all three pillars of wellness: physical, physiological, psychological, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and community. Man, Dr. Lance, that's a lot, my brother, but thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you know how long it took me to use crayons to write that? That was like a month.
I was gonna ask, man. Writing with your feet. First of all, congrats, bro. Thanks for your service. Let's just go on a journey together. Talk us through your childhood. Sounds like you had some childhood trauma, kind of like most people do. But childhood to how you found the United States Army, and talk us through that.
Sure. And well, first of all, Whiz, thank you for having me on. Thank you for the relationship that we've built It's been a minute, and I'm just so thankful for what you're doing, and the fact that we get to link arms and do this, be on this journey together.
Amen.
So early on, my father was military as well. He was enlisted. He served in the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force.
Wow.
Mainly because he would screw up and get kicked out of one and then go and enlist in another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He made E6 times. Back in the days when you could do that, and
Correct.
the running joke was, he would have joined the Marines as well, but when he applied, they found out his parents were married, and so they wouldn't let him in.
That sounds about right. Semper Fi.
So that being said, there was definitely generational trauma. He had a very, very difficult childhood post depression. Ran away from home a bunch. When he was 12, he ran away to join the Merchant Marines during World War II, and was a cabin boy. For a stint of time. He endured a lot of sexual trauma during that time, although it wasn't spoken about because, unfortunately, cabin boys were crew recreation in those days, and wasn't talked about. He leaned into alcohol as his self-soothe mechanism, his survival tool that had very significant impacts on my childhood. He was very physically, emotionally abusive, and so I picked up survival tools. Some of those were academic performance. I looked for external support. I joined Boy Scouts at a young age, and I was in a situation where it's like, well, you're not going to move the goalposts. You mean I can actually do something and get that which was promised as the payoff, and so that provided a beautiful place for me to grow and to pick up some Thrive tools. Our assistant scoutmaster was actually a Nez Perce indigenous elder, and he, I believe, recognized the trauma that I was navigating, and really stepped in as a father figure and a role model. And at the time, a lot of the kids from the nation were running to get off of the reservation and assimilate. I was running to get on and learn. And so he taught me so many things as far as wilderness survival, of being in community with all of our, with our environment, with our animal brothers and sisters, and the plants, and plants that had nutritional qualities, medicinal qualities. Taught me how to trap, how to hunt, how to survive, how to fish, in indigenous ways. And I ended up being one of the youngest Eagle Scouts in the state of Idaho at the time. And after I was awarded my Eagle Award, and there was some father drama with that. He had this huge court of honor for the whole city, and my dad showed up late and drunk and a lot of things. And so after that, Elmer pulled me aside and he said, "All right, it's time for you to go on your vision quest." And so at 15 years old, I was taken through a very traditional path of a 3-day food and water fast, followed by a sweat, which was a transcendental experience, a sweat lodge ceremony. And then I was taken out into the sacred wood and left for 3 days until my Waiakin, or my spirit guide, presented itself.
Wow.
So that, so you take a highly traumatized 15-year-old, run him through that, and then leave him in the woods for 3 days, and that's going to change some things. And so really it planted a lot of seeds. That same year, we had a lot of suicides at our high school, and so they implemented a test program. They surveyed and asked the student population, who do you go to when you're having hard times? And those of us that were named, there were a couple of us in each of the social groups or the cliques. And we were all gathered together, and we were actually put through a certified peer specialist course. So it was 40 hours of didactic training, and then we were taken on a week-long retreat for the practicum. And then we embedded back into the student population with a better toolkit to be able to help people navigate their hard things. Our suicide rate went to zero.
Wow.
We had some shootings that were that we interceded in, so they didn't happen. And it was really an amazing program. And that started me on the journey, the quest for knowledge, those two things. And then and then I turned 16, bought a car, really got into girls and booze, and explored the hedonist lifestyle as well. As one sometimes does when we're exploring tools.
Yep.
And which ultimately led to some lived experience that is part of the toolkit now. So in all of that, I turned down a West Point appointment, and because I thought I had an Air Force 4-year full ride scholarship that was promised to me, and I was going to go to Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach, Florida, on a 4-year full ride. If you get the full ride from one of the services, then they provide a room and board. Our economic situation was not real great. Growing up in a sawmill town in Lewiston, Idaho, and my father's situation the way that it was. So I turned down West Point because I was promised this 4-year.
When was this? Because I was at Embry-Riddle 87 to 88.
In Florida?
Yeah.
I would have been there. I would have been class of 86. So
okay.
or I would have started there 86, class of 90. But truth be told, had I gone there with the toolkit that I had, I'd probably still be in the undergrad program today.
Well, I bring that up because I said I went to Embry-Riddle 87, 88. Because I found out quickly that they should not have a college in Daytona Beach.
Right.
So I ended up transferring up the street to Jacksonville University after a year at Embry-Riddle with my ninja. And, oh, yeah, that's a separate story, bro. So, yeah, I figured, especially because you were an Eagle Scout, man, that's like an auto admission to West Point or the service academies. That's a big deal, especially at that age, getting your Eagle Scout. That's awesome.
And Idaho was a small state. We had 2 congressmen, so one supported me for West Point, the other one supported me for this 4-year full ride.
Yeah,
it was a buddy. My packet got set aside, buddy. PCS'd out of the scholarship award seat. Somebody else came in, didn't know about my packet being set aside. So
here we go.
To punish the Air Force, I enlisted in the Army.
Take that.
Right. I'll show you.
I'll show you, yeah. Well, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir. Everything happens exactly how it's supposed to. So
it does. It does. I enlisted very quickly, ended up on a Special Forces MI team. I had an uncle that was naval intelligence, went to work for the company. He made a few calls, and so pretty quickly I ended up having a seat on the team and did that. And so, in those times, in the 80s, there was a lot of stuff happening in South America, and so we participated. I was on an intelligence collection team, so I was the comms guy. Our whole job was to get in and out without being seen, and then we would brief the door kickers, and they'd go do their thing. So I did that long enough to realize, every time we went someplace, it was a roll of the dice, and I wanted to live long enough to be on your podcast. So
wow.
So I took a green to gold scholarship, ended up going to Embry-Riddle, had enough wisdom to go to Prescott instead of Daytona.
Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't have the Ninja. I had a VFR. We all were living that dream, right?
Yes. Yeah, and, that mid to late 80s, early 90s vibe, man. It was a vibe. Yep.
Yeah. I had the leather jacket and quickly found out that at 5,000 feet, when you're riding into PT, in December, there is very little you can wear that will keep your thighs from just freezing into icicles.
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up trading it in for a Chevy S10 Blazer. But anyhow,
Yes.
we live, we learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up. So the thought was, okay, I'm not going to fly. I'm not going to fly jets. I'm going to fly helicopters, and I'll go fly for the Night Stalkers, and I'll be a Task Force 160 guy. So I got a degree in aero engineering with a minor in psychology because I was still very, very keenly interested in that work and continued to really implement a lot of what I'd learned early on whenever there was a class for, to identify substance abuse or identify spousal abuse or family
Mm-hmm.
support or all of those things, navigating trauma, etc. My hand always went up to go to those. Nobody else wanted to do them. So I continued to assimilate education tools. Um, our team doc found a hypnotherapist, and he wouldn't write anything in our file. He's like, I'm not going to put this in your file because if we, and I'm backtracking back to the enlisted days, if I put it there, you're likely going to end your career.
Mm-hmm.
So he found a hypnotherapist for us, and we would go load up and go talk to him. And so I was exposed to the benefit of hypnotherapy and continuing care. We didn't necessarily resolve anything, but it at least gave us some resourcing other than a pill to try to navigate the what we were exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of the exposure. Went to go be a helicopter pilot. These are the days before LASIK. Um, I found out that I had an astigmatism, and so when it came for a session of branch, Uncle Sam in his infinite wisdom said, "Ooh, okay, you'll make a great infantry officer with your engineering degree." So
With your
that's what I did.
aeronautical engineering degree. The needs of the military, the needs of the Army. Yep.
And part of that was self-inflicted. It was actually in one of my top choices because, tip of the spear, all of that good stuff.
Sure.
And so ended up going mechanized infantry, and I was like, holy shit, I don't have to carry all this stuff. Wow. And went to Germany. Ended up in an armor heavy brigade. We were overstrength infantry lieutenants, understrength armor lieutenants. So for a leadership opportunity, I went to the brigade one and said, "Hey, do you think I could go talk to one of the armor battalion commanders?" And he's like, "I'll give you a shot." And so I went and interviewed with one. I had a lot of schools under my belt: Bradley Commander Course, infantry. Mortar platoon leader course.
Jeez.
And so at the time, Colonel Jones, now General Jones, he's like, all right, I'll give you a shot. And so I was actually an M1 Abrams tank platoon leader. Then I was a mortar platoon leader. And as a mortar platoon leader, then I moved over to the infantry battalion in our brigade. We went to Bosnia when the Dayton Peace Accord was first signed. And then I served as mortar platoon leader under a phenomenal leader by the name of Tony Kukalo, who went on to become a 2-star before he retired. And, I tell people, so many of us go into the military seeking that rite of passage and seeking that validation. And there are a lot of leaders who went before us looking for the same thing. They didn't find it, and shit rolls downhill. Tony was one of the exceptions. Phenomenal leader. I would grease up in baby oil and follow that guy straight into hell. Just an amazing, amazing man, amazing leader. So he was one of the great mentors that I did my very best to emulate during that time in the military and beyond. I was the marriage that I was in, both of us had a lot of childhood trauma that we brought into the relationship, and each looked to the other to try to fix it. And a lot of those difficulties led to me leaving the military and trying to navigate that space without adequate tools. Even with the tools that I had, it wasn't enough. Ended up doing some entrepreneurial things, continued with my education. Some of it was practicum of living in dysfunction and more lived experience, right?
Yeah.
And even with all of those tools, still found myself with a gun barrel in my mouth a couple of times, looking at self-soothing, bottle of bourbon a night kind of stuff. We ended up divorcing, and I went through hitting rock bottom and coming back up out of it. I did that advocacy work with the cannabis study starting in 2010. We were using, and so it was very hush hush off book. We took some heroin addicted Marines because unfortunately we were in California at the time, and you would see Marines come back from the Middle East and they had neuropathy, TBI, PTSD, CTEs, go to the VA and unfortunately walk out with a shopping bag full of pharma with what I call the polypharmaceutical lobotomy. And most times, Oxycontin back then was handed out like Tic Tacs.
Oh my God.
And so most would drop the SSRIs, the SNRIs, the benzos, stick with the opiates because the opiates kill the pain.
Correct.
And they also knock you out long enough at night to sleep until it doesn't work. And then the neurochemistry changes, the dependency increases. Go back to the VA. Hey, I need an up on this.
Correct.
VA levels out, starts scoring oxy on the street. Back then it was $8 to $10 a pill. And then it was like, oh shit, a tar ball of heroin's only $2.
Oh my God.
So it's an economic decision for survival. And so then now you've got addicts, and that addiction was initially incited. The predicate was the VA treatment protocol, and lovely, beautiful people at the VA. As an organization, unfortunately, I feel it's very compromised by big pharma, and I imagine we share that perspective.
Yeah. Amen. It's a revolving door between the VA and big pharma. It's just sad. A guy waits 8 months to get an appointment, and what's wrong with you? Here's a bunch of pills. Next appointment's 2 years from now. It's a horror. Yeah. Hopefully we'll see some. It's just such a behemoth that it's just so hard to stop. Right. It's just got so much inertia, and shit, man. It was a year or two ago during a DC visit, a congressman who shall remain nameless behind closed doors. He said, "Whiz, I love what you're doing. You're gonna have a problem with the big pharma and the alcohol and tobacco folks." I'm like, "Ain't that your job?" What do you mean I'm gonna have a problem with them? Fuck. Yeah. That's sad. It's sad. So, man, you're in California. You're seeing all this stuff. You're trying to heal guys with cannabis. Is that where it started?
Yeah. That's where it started. So we put together a cohort of heroin addicted Marines, and I'd seen information coming out. There was a guy up in Oregon that had bought a little strip motel and was letting guys come, and for 2 weeks they would have a room. And they would have as much cannabis, as many cannabis products as they could consume for their detox. And so they, as I'm sure you know, you cannot overdose on cannabis in its original form. It's impossible. Yep. We all have an endocannabinoid system. We've got CB1 and CB2 receptors that uptake all of those cannabinoids, and there are 90 plus cannabinoids. You add terpenes in, there are over 150 mechanisms within that plant that, when used properly, can really positively affect healing. And so this guy, and I grew up, I was Nancy Reagan, just say no, dare.
Of course.
I joined the military to fight the cartels. I'm going to bring down Pablo myself.
Clear and present danger, man. Tom Clancy, Harrison Ford. So it
was like, let's go. And then, but But then when I hear that, and I'm recognizing, there's something that's not lining up here. And so then I did my best to set aside my preconceptions and approach things with some objective curiosity, or as objective as I could be.
Well, and you and I were also kids during the Nixon, pre-Reagan. This was the Vietnam. Hey, here's a rifle. Go kill the yellow man. I don't kill the yellow man. I've never met him and I love him. What makes you love somebody you've never met? Well, he took these things. Okay, well, those are a felony now. Here's your rifle. Go kill people. We were taught, the hippies and the drug rugs and the Malabees, they were all subversive anti-American people, and anything that they took was, going to make you jump off a roof and die. My God. Reefer madness. I mean, that was before our time, but, reefer madness or just coming out of the Nixon administration, it was a flamethrower to anything. Right? Anything that came out of the planet is evil. Anything that comes out of Purdue or, Big Pharma is yay.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned reefer madness because, if you go back and you look at Adslinger, to get cannabis outlawed, and there are lots of rabbit trails we can go down here. Getting cannabis outlawed was a backdoor to get hemp outlawed because hemp was competing with nylon.
Amen. That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, and so you look at all of the innovations that came. The Cummins diesel engine was initially made to run on hemp oil. The original Levi Strauss was made out of hemp. The Declaration of Independence is written on hemp paper,
exactly.
which is how it's been able to survive for so long, right? And so. Yeah, that reefer madness was like an SNL spoof back in the day. It was made to just to poke a lot of fun, but
Correct.
with the desire to outlaw hemp, and you can't outlaw an industrial crop, so you come at it through a back door by outlawing cannabis. Mm-hmm. The people that made and produced reefer madness, they were approached and told, so this is a documentary, right? And they're like, no, it's a spoof. It's like, you want to see your family? This is a documentary, right?
Yeah.
And so then Adslinger took that and ran with it as far as the whole smear campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then you look at the Nixon cannabis investigation, the Nixon report on cannabis. He initiated this investigation to show that once and for all, it's bad, it's terrible, it's horrible. And then, he hired the best and the brightest, and they came back and like, this is actually pretty good. It's neuroprotective, it's not neurodegenerative. And so quietly, the U.S. government secured 3 patents for the medical use of cannabis while concurrently putting it on Schedule I as a substance that has no medical use.
Good times are coming, man. Now let's pull out of our nosedive because it's just it's infuriating, man. It's just as I do, the definition of a Schedule I drug is no therapeutic use and a high risk of addiction. But of course, the U.S. government labels things the exact opposite of what they are. The Inflation Reduction Act actually caused inflation. The Affordable Care Act, I mean, it's obscene. All right, so cannabis, and then talk us through some as you grew in the medicine space from cannabis. What else did you find?
So even with this work that we did, and even utilizing it, so not only was it utilized to help people wean off of their opiate addictions, we were utilizing it. We would have people medicate because if you go back and you look at history, cannabis tinctures and derivatives were, in the Americana Pharmacopoeia prior to 1933, it was actually used to treat spousal abuse. It was used to treat substance abuse. It was used to treat alcoholism. And so, so when we started going back and looking, it's like, okay, well, it was used to treat epileptic seizures. And so then the conjecture was, okay, so there is some kind of we didn't know it was a vagus nerve response back then as much as we do now, but okay, we've got some kind of a trigger, an involuntary seizure, and cannabis is used to treat that. Can we use it to intercept fight or flight response? And we found that when we had patients medicate about a half an hour before a cognitive behavioral therapy session, talk therapy session, then that fight or flight slowed down, and then there was a window of opportunity. We now know that that was increasing parasympathetic response, decreasing sympathetic nervous system response, and it allowed a chance, instead of going straight into fight mode, there was a chance to pause and unpack. For those that are familiar with cannabis, if it is just cannabis that's being utilized, there's no violent behavior that comes. The only thing you want to beat up is a bag of potato chips or a pizza.
Not too many cannabis bar fights, man, or drunk driving, or exactly. Yeah, sadly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a study done with 3 test groups, actually right after Colorado legalized cannabis. And so the test group was a sober group of drivers, a group that were intoxicated with alcohol, and those that had medicated with cannabis. And they found that the test group of cannabis drivers outperformed 100% of the alcohol intoxicated drivers, and outperformed 40% of the sober drivers.
The sober drivers. Oh my God, that's funny. I love that.
So as far as the progression, so even with that, I still found myself struggling and spiraling, and so I had all of these resources, had a hard time accessing them, didn't necessarily understand how to reprogram the amygdala or the central brain response. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you've got your prefrontal cortex where your conscious mind lives, and that's where moral skills, integrity, strategic vision, creativity, love, life, bliss, all of that good stuff lives there. Mm-hmm. And then you've got your subconscious, your default mode network, your survival instinct, that all lives in your central brain or your amygdala. And your amygdala navigates you forward by looking in a rear view mirror. Mm-hmm. What have I done to get here? That's what I'm going to keep doing. There is no strategic planning. There's no forward planning. There's no moral scale. There's just same, not same. Anything that's not same, we're going to sabotage that to bring things back into same. Mm-hmm. Whatever same looks like. So for those of us that had traumatized childhoods, same is chaos. Chaos is comfortable to the reptilian brain, the amygdala. And so anything that's not that, it's going to try to bring things back to known patterns. Mm-hmm. And so, I was struggling with that and didn't necessarily, how do I get there from here? And then like many of us, I took the approach of, well, I can't save me, but maybe I can make things better for other people. Started investigating multi-modal solutions. And so along the way, after my work with veterans and seeing that unfortunately a lot of veteran-focused nonprofits, the veterans are window dressing, and very, very little of the resourcing that comes actually goes to benefit. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there's a lot of damage done to the overall movement by, hey, here's Jim. Jim's sleeping on this this park bench, and Jim's on drugs, and Jim's just hanging on by a thread. And with generous donations, now we got Jim cleaned up, and we got him a new suit, and he went and interviewed at Walmart, and now Jim's moving boxes, and he's got a future. Yep. Would you please donate to our cause? Wells Fargo vice president, sure, we'll donate to that cause. And so then same vice president gets a resume, a CV, and this guy's a military veteran. So where does it go to? Okay, this guy's ready to lose his shit, and so no, we don't want to hire any veterans. And then so Jim that got his suit and got his Walmart job, that might have been $200 worth of that $40,000 that went to support Jim.
Correct.
The rest of the money went to pay the staff and the executives. That so there I just saw so much manipulation, misuse of the cause, and so that jaded me a bit. Also seeing big pharma. So with pursuing my, a medical track, I made the vow I was not going to, sacrifice my soul on the altar of big pharma just to be able to have a couple of initials after my name. So I took a naturopathic or a holistic route to come up to the functional medicine doctorate. And so definitely approach things a little differently. So that so all of these things by kind of checking my the indoctrinated perceptions allowed me to explore things and be able to get to a place where I believe we're truly affecting very significant change for those that we work with.
Now, talk us through, just so everybody knows, well, let's talk through Mons Sana. Where'd that come from, the genesis and the work you're doing? We sent three guys last month, was it? Three, and then we coming up is what, another 3 or 4 or however many out in the great state of Colorado. So give all the viewers and the listeners a Mons Sana brief, because it's just seen absolutely incredible results. And then obviously on the back channel, talking to John and Chris and some of your Top Gun instructors, it just feels good. It feels like an incredible healing center. So talk us through, where did you come up with that and the work you're doing out there?
Well, thanks. It's really been an evolution because, when I was on the precipice, okay, I can't fix me, I can help fix others. So I started exploring alternative therapies and investigated hyperbaric, vibroacoustic sound therapy, sound healing, these things that we were told are, quote, woo-woo. And even energy work, and it's like, oh, energy work, there's no such thing. As we're talking on cell phones that have no tethering, yet somehow that energy exchange allows for communication.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting dichotomy that we'll say we're incapable of energy exchange, yet we're speaking on devices.
Bro,
that do that for everything.
you and I can use energy for good. There are weapons called direct energy weapons, man. Some of these, 5th generation fighters aren't even going to have bombs or missiles, man. It's going to be direct energy weapons. So if we can use energy to destroy and blow things up, I'm pretty sure we could probably go in the other direction too and use it for good.
Well, sure. And even the simple dipstick test. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like things are off or ooh? In our community, we call it our spidey sense.
Yeah,
right?
The hair on the back of our neck is standing up. Yeah.
Well, how? If we're only relying on our our 5 senses, how is that? So when we approach things with ambivalent objective curiosity, sometimes we find answers that maybe we had chosen to be blind to before then. So all of that led me to putting together some multimodal approaches to care, and was looking at ketamine as one of those pieces. I didn't have experience with it, so that led me to going to a MAPS conference, because I was going to go and round out my education and go through Phil Wolfson's class, which Phil's done some phenomenal work with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and really a pioneer of that. And so that was kind of the above ground, underground, because ketamine kind of made it through the wickets of, well, it does fall as a class of psychedelic, and it's an off-label use of an anesthesia that's highly safe and effective. And we can't go in and ban off-label use of drugs because 30% of all drugs prescribed in the U.S. are for an off-label use.
Exactly.
So, it's like, okay, we've got to sit with this, and the Princeton studies in the 90s showed that it's effective. So all of those things led to that, and it's like, okay, we'll do the compliant thing. And, okay, I'm going to go to this MAPS conference, and and even so, I brought my preconceptions. Okay, it's going to be a bunch of hippy dippy shit, and drum circles, hairy armpits, tie dye, and love beads, and I all right, but I'll go in there and I'll glean out what I need. And then when I walked out on the exhibit floor, and it was like cut and brush, and then coming into a clearing and seeing uniforms of, I mean, there were so many special operators, so many people that were there. You were there, and you were talking, and that's actually where we met. And I was like, whoa, okay, there's more to this. And so then I'm like, all right, if we're going to go,
governors, Democrat, Republican, athletes, veterans, and hippies, of course, everybody, a wide, first responders, a wide swath of everybody, all aligned in a healing direction. Well, talk about your hair standing up on the back of your neck. I walked like you, man. I walked in there. I'm like, I'm home. This feels good. Yeah.
Yeah. For the first time in a long time, it felt home.
Yeah.
And so then
good squadron, a bunch of good squadron mates. Yeah.
Yeah, so jumped in, Chad with Mental Joe and I just really hit it off.
Great dude. Chad and Carrie are good people, man. Great people.
Such great people.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, now let's really start diving.
Yeah.
And so many things started falling in place, and it was kind of like the keystone for this arch that I'd been building all of these years. Boom. So I went through a deep healing retreat. And experienced it myself, and I'm like, okay, now let's go down this journey, and then also recognized, I went through, and a lot of the guys that went through the retreat to my left and right didn't necessarily punch through as far. So then it was like, why? Okay, well, let's, for my personal journey, I'd been reintegrating, and doing the pre-work for a long time. And so then when it fell into place, it really fell into place. And then there was a great aftercare support program for that iteration of that healing retreat, and recognized how important that is. And, what has really come to mind is a metaphor, because I'm an Army guy, so I think in pictures and then try to translate into words, right?
I get it.
And so really it was, if we look at our psyche is like a piece of metal, and every peak emotional experience we go to heats up that metal. And we look for tools to help us navigate that peak emotional experience, and those tools are used to form the metal into something that helps us get through what we're getting through. Well, then there comes a time when that forging of survival needs to be reforged into thrive. And so now let's say we've got a sword, and now we're at a stage in life where we need a plow. Okay, well, you can cold hammer, you can cold forge a piece of metal from one thing into another. Takes a long time. And
a lot of energy.
It is a lot of energy, and it's noisy, and people wear out. And so then they'll hammer on that sword for a little bit, and it's like, this is good enough. I'll just go out and plow with this frickin' sword.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but it's not optimal. Or we can put it into a furnace and really heat it up so that every hammer stroke really helps it form. And so the furnace is plant medicine, right? So the plant medicine creates this peak emotional experience. It creates neurosynaptic hyperactivity. It creates neurogenesis, all of these things. Unfortunately, a lot of people will put their sword into the furnace, heat it up, bring it back out. Oh, look at that thing. It's glowing hot. But they won't swing the hammer to change its form. And so ultimately what ends up happening is now you've got a shittier version of the sword than what you started with.
Correct. Yeah.
Because it lost its temper, and now it's starting to scale and rust, to follow that metaphor all the way through.
And you have that window, right? I remember, my first medicine experience down at the Mission Within, Doc Martine, and, that next morning I was like, that's it. I'm a different human being. I've never, done. And they're like, all right, Whiz, throttle back a little bit. 5% here, the medicine. 95% what you do with it, the integration. And I'm like, whatever. Coming up on 4 years ago, I think that they were wrong. I'd say 1% was the medicine. 99 was what you do when you get home, and the integration, to your point. Otherwise, it was just an experience, right?
Right. Is it experience or is it transformation?
Exactly.
And but but we only know what we know until we know more. And so, and part of that is that deep programming of there is a magic pill, there's a silver bullet, and so okay, well maybe it's not a pill, maybe it's a compound, or maybe it's a drink, but it's still that idea that there's a magic pill, and that's one of the biggest lies that's been perpetuated in humanity since the inception of
Correct.
Of that concept. So when we can say no, these are just tools, these are catalysts, and that's what's led us to the three true medicines are safety, love, and community. Those are the real medicines of humanity. And these other things are simply tools that help us get to a place where we can receive those medicines and truly heal.
Amen.
And so that journey, so going to MAPS and then working with a lot of other folks that are well intended, bringing the medicine to people, and not and still, I think, looking at the medicine being the cure instead of us being the cure, or those three medicines being the cure. That's where Amy and I, having gone through our experience, and then the other challenge, and I'm sure Susie can attest, I went away for this transformative experience, and I came back, and my transformation was a peak emotional experience for Amy.
Correct.
She was like, "Who the fuck are you?
this?
And why are you wearing my husband's meat suit?" And so that was a lot to navigate. And so part of our program that we've developed is a very robust loved one support as well, because if we're snapped together like two jigsaw puzzle pieces and one of the pieces changes shape, what happens? So there's got to be some opportunity for the support person to be aware of those changes, to have the opportunity to experience safety, love, and community, so that they can mold into this new form. Otherwise, recidivism is very high. If we don't have support, if we don't have education and knowledge for the loved ones, and they've got their secondary trauma too from dealing with us. Correct. And so it needs to be a complete package to really provide that safe healing opportunity. One of the metaphors that I tell people is, so I look out my window here at the forest here in Colorado, and if you're looking to go out and live in that forest, an axe is a great tool. You can use it to cut down branches and make a shelter. You can use it to chop firewood, to dress out game, to defend yourself. If you wanted to build the house that I'm living in, that axe isn't going to do you for shit. You need a lot of other tools to move from survive into thrive. And so there needs to be a combination of things that come together all at once. There needs to be the why, or the desire. There needs to be the new tools. There needs to be somebody there to teach you how to use the tool. And if all of those things aren't, because if you were to show up, okay, I've got the desire and there's the tools, and but all I've ever known how to use is an axe. Correct. I'm going to look around and say, screw this, I'm going to go back and live in my hooch because I'm familiar with that. So all of those things need to come together to truly affect positive change. And so with Mons Sana, that's what we're building. And no stagnation here. We're always looking to evolve and create this safe place for people to not only heal, but to shift out of survive and shift into thrive. That's our goal and our intention.
What talk us through, because a lot of the folks listening are vets or first responders or family members who again, one of those sentences that 5 years ago, Whiz, if I heard me say I'd give me a wedgie and steal my lunch money as the medicine calls to you. Today, I actually believe that, right? And I also believe that the second you sit there and go, you know what? I'd love to do this, or I'd love to be better. The universe changes, man. Things start aligning. So talk us through a tip. What are the guys and the gals going to experience in a couple weeks at Mons Sana?
Sure. And I want to address that point. Carl Jung said life begins at 40. Until then, we're collecting data, right? So that's a Jungian approach.
That's a great
Another
point. Yeah. Yeah.
from some of the wisdom cultures, there's the concept of the two mountains. We spend the first half of our life climbing the mountain of worldly success. What the world tells us is success, and then from that mountaintop, we can look out on the range and find our second mountain, which is our mountain of purpose. And that lines up with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, and really it carries through so many of our traditions and our culture. So
It does.
with that said, with our Mons Sana protocol, how we approach things is we start creating community before people come. And so there's education, there's community to build safety. And so we meet together, we answer questions. There is no kind of secret or this is proprietary. This is open source. We didn't create it. We're just assembling things that are effective, so not ours to be covetous of. So it starts with education, community. We have Zoom calls. We connect people. We make some recommendations as far as things to eliminate from diet to reduce inflammation and create receptivity to these other tools. So we encourage people to cut wheat, corn, soy, and seed oils from their diet for a lot of reasons we can get into at another time, but reducing the inflammatory markers and inflammatory response. We educate about the type of medicines we're going to use. We let people connect with each other, share their stories, share their intentions, so that when they're showing up, we're not all looking around, okay, who are you? I don't know that I feel safe. There's at least a level of connection. And so then our retreats are 6 days, 5 nights. So folks show up, we take them through a medicine experience where we use cacao, which is grown up hot chocolate, minus all of the milk solids and the sugar and the partially hydrogenated vegetable oils and all of those things. So cacao is a beautiful traditional medicine, and it's a heart opener and it's a grounding medicine. We also use Amanita muscaria, which is the Mario mushroom, or the one that the Smurfs lived in. That was actually indigenous medicine in Europe way
Santa
way
Claus.
Santa, yeah. The whole idea of Santa Claus. Santa Claus was actually a Northern European shaman, and again, for another
podcast.
And it is a very therapeutic medicine when used properly, and it's also another very grounding medicine. And so we have ceremony space, and there's no dogma. We as humans celebrate significant transformations in our life by ceremony. We have graduation ceremonies. You're heading to your son's ceremony.
Correct.
When we're baptized, it's a baptism ceremony. It's
Wedding.
a marriage ceremony. It's end of life is a funeral ceremony. So the important things we celebrate with ceremony, and so this is no different. So we approach this as a very sacred opportunity for us to collaborate together and to affect significant change. And so we have a place that we call the ceremony hall, and folks get to come in to that space. It's very soft, it's very nurturing, and so they experience these two medicines, and then we have a breath work time where we're using holotropic breath work. And again, prior to some of this investigation, it's like, whatever.
Exactly.
But there's so much science behind the benefits of holotropic breath work. And so this is an opportunity for everybody to come together to experience these things. It's like flying in the simulator before you actually go up in the bird, and to build comfort and build safety. So that's the first day. Then we get together, we share a meal together because there's so much community that's built over meals. We share intentions. Then the next day, we have some workshopping, introducing some tools to help navigate the experience that's upcoming. Um, and then we have our first deep medicine experience or ceremony, and we use a combination of medicines. We use Kana, which is a South African succulent that we all have, those of us from Europe have an epigenetic connection to because the Dutch brought it into Europe from the 13th through the 17th century. It's a heart opener. It's like 600 grit sandpaper. It's an adaptogenic, so it's just soft. It opens the heart, makes us a little more open to receiving. Then we go into, we utilize a tea made with psilocybin cubanus, and that's your magic mushroom. In psilocybin, it has very profound healing effects. It's primarily a serotonin analog, and that helps incite neuroplasticity, in some cases neurogenesis. And if we view things from the mental viewpoint, it gives us the opportunity to kind of step out of the first person into the third person and look at things from a different perspective. And from the spiritual / community, this is something we're doing together to create safety and community. And from spiritual, it's connecting to something bigger than yourself, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's God, source, the universe, light, love, energy, that the divine, however you choose to view it, through that lens, you're able to have, you have the potential to have that interface. We started a low dose. The way we approach it is, if we're creating safety and security, we don't have to kick down the door if we check and find out that the doorknob is unlocked and you can just open it up.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think you and I both experienced the wrecking ball. We don't necessarily have to approach it that way. Healing doesn't have to be hard.
Correct.
And so we start off with a 2.5 gram dose, and then partway in we give participants the opportunity to experience more if they choose. They don't have to, and then we collaborate as to what feels right for them in the moment. So really we're wanting to create sovereignty. And internal motivation instead of external motivation, because then that also creates sovereignty, that creates self-reliance, that creates accountability, and then about 4 hours in, then we provide Amanita muscaria, again something that we've been introduced to, because Amanita is a GABA semi-agonist, and so now we're creating scaffolded support through another neural pathway that allows all of those downloads that we get from the psilocybin experience to be contained, and we don't have that serotonin dump and feeling like we're a wet bag of laundry that was just dropped on the ground, which is common with psilocybin experiences sometimes.
Yeah.
This provides a much softer landing.
Okay.
So then we do some integration work that day. The next day we have what we call a gray day or an integration day. We use animal therapy. So we go visit a farm, and we're interacting with Highland minis, which are like dogs with horns, and goats and potbelly pigs and llamas. And then we have an equine therapy portion of that, which again is incredibly profound in healing. And then we process that experience. The next day, we have another psilocybin experience. We use a different strain that's got some different characteristics, very similar to the first deep medicine journey. But now we've unpacked some things, and so when we go back in, typically there's a lot of elevation in viewpoint and the things that we're able to experience. And then the day after that, we have another integration day where we bring in other modalities. We bring stroboscopic light therapy. We bring vibroacoustic sound beds. We bring sound healing. We bring yin yoga, which is deep fascial stretching yoga to help release trauma. Bessel van der Kolk has put together a great body of work and wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And there's a lot of science that shows that we actually store trauma in the fascia of our body. Those are the memory banks. And so the more we can get in kinetically stretch that, the more there's the opportunity for that to release.
Move the energy, like you and I talked about earlier. You can move the energy.
Yeah. And we bring different things. So we do talk about energy centers and chakras. We bring in concepts, Dr. David Hawkins' levels of consciousness. We bring in Dr. Richard Schwartz's internal family systems perspective. We bring in Shirzad Shamin's positive intelligence. So we create this array of tools for people to be able to experience. And it's kind of like it's like the food court of alternative wellness tools.
It is. It's a buffet. Yeah. Yep.
It's a buffet, so you get a sample.
Whatever you like. If you don't like the asparagus, move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because we're all each our own individual masterful creation, this is not assembly line work.
Yeah.
Anybody that thinks that they can push medicine work or mental wellness work into an assembly line doesn't understand the work.
Correct. It's not necessarily copy paste for everybody. So yeah, you get a variety. Doc, so if people are interested, do you help civilians at all, or are you just focused on vets, first responders, and their families and stuff like that? How's it look?
We do, and after the retreat, we offer 60 days
the
of
integration,
very robust
support.
support.
I'm seeing it. I'm in the WhatsApp, and I see the power of the integration. So yeah, I did not want to give short shift to the integration. It's been phenomenal. The journal prompts, the sessions, the everything like that. As we alluded to earlier, 1%'s the medicine, 99's what we do home. So didn't want to cut you off there, but because I know people are interested after hearing the brief about what you guys do. How do we get a hold of you? How can I attend a retreat? Talk us through that briefly.
Sure. And the answer is yes, civilians, absolutely. Our population ranges from CEOs and professional athletes that we work with to first responders, their families. Ultimately, those are all aspects of things that we've done. We're all part of the human race, and enlightenment is when the wave realizes it's the ocean, right? And so,
amen.
So yes, there is no, there's nobody standing at the door saying you're not allowed in because of X. So safety is safety for all. How folks can connect with us through you, of course. We don't have a website up yet. So far, it's just been word of mouth. I do have a LinkedIn profile. It's Lance Cutsforth, I can send contact information that can be posted with this podcast as well, so people can reach out.
Awesome. Okay. So folks, if you're interested, you can reach out to me. I'm good buddies with Dr. Lance, and I can hook you guys up until you guys get a website up. So my brother, you're doing the Lord's work, and what you just kind of alluded to right there, we're all cosmic stardust, man, and that was born in a brilliant flash of love, light, and energy. So we are all one team, one fight, and you'll probably agree with me. One of the reasons I think these medicines are illegal, at least still at a federal level, not Oregon and Colorado, thank you voters, is they can turn warriors into peacemakers. I've seen some incredible transitions of guys and gals who were meat-eating knuckle dragger killers, and they want nothing to do with any of that, and to give peace a chance. So my brother, thank you for everything you're doing, you and your bride. I want to make it out there, hopefully to the maybe to the April Top Gun level flight instructor school. I think that would be cool. I know you're talking to our Chief Medical Officer, Rosie, tomorrow. I think you guys are going to be, you guys are two peas in a pod. So, and maybe maybe you can join us on our advisory board too. I'll follow up with you on that. I'd love to have you. You literally are a 500-pound head in this field, and you're an incredibly beautiful soul. And I'm honored to call you a squadron mate, my brother.
Thank you, brother. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for this chance to share our hearts
Yeah, man. Well, this ain't going to be the last time you're going to see Dr. Lance, folks. So he's a squadron mate of mine, and I trust him with my life. So if you have any questions, you'd love to heal, go to nofallenheroes.com. Up on the top right, there's a little menu drop down that says grant request or intake, and we'll hook you up. So Dr. Lance Cutsforth, I love that name, man. It's just it's powerful. Thanks for having us today, my brother. And ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste and basi. Whiz and Dr. Lance out.